Gyökeres is here, produced to the crowd. For me, let me tell you my overall observations from what I've seen preseason so far, and maybe you could kind of piggyback off of this in terms of how you think we're figuring Gyökeres. In the first game, in that first half, I think the first halves of both games we played were probably the better halves for me. The first half of the first game I thought was really, really intriguing to see Arsenal play how we played. And it reminded me of a lot of what we talked about last season, getting the ball forward, winning the ball back, getting on the front foot as early as possible so we can hurt teams on counter attack. That is where I think was going to be our strong suit, not only this season, but it was our strong suit back in 22-23, the season we like to bring up so often. If you talk about players like Norgard and Zubamendi, people talk massively about them coming in. Are they better than Jorginho and Partey? And we could talk between us. We like Jorginho and Partey for what they brought to us last season. We think they're quality. But in terms of Zubamendi and Norgard, there's been a lot of talk about have they upgraded this team. For you, KP, my first question to you is: has there been anything that you've seen that you can say those two signings have upgraded this team? Because for me, I think they have. And is there anything that you've seen that you personally like from those two?
Yeah, I feel like obviously it's very early to like definitely say, but I do think that they are upgrade. I think Zubimendi is one of the best sixes in the game, and I feel like he's been able to show that in the first two games, especially the second game. I think he just showed his display of how to control a game, like and dictate tempo, speed up, slow it down, play smart passes around the corner and stuff like, which is like what you want to see. And I feel like with Norgard as well, I feel like what's been most interesting from him is like, yeah, it's just his comfortability on the ball and his will to just want to play it forward early. Like as you said, like we stalled a lot last season to just get the ball early to attackers before teams set up, for teams are able to double team on players, and before teams are able to confide the space like and get into that low block. So it's nice seeing us get the ball early to Sackers, get the ball early to Havertz, to Trossard, for example, in the previous game, to Wanyeri within the pockets and letting them play. And I'm also liking the fact that defensively they're looking decent. Obviously, they will need to get accustomed to the pace of the game. I feel like we've been caught in the transition a lot in these pre-season
Yeah,
games, the AC Milan
especially
game, and
defensively.
also that Newcastle game as well. So that's not just only on Zubimendi, but it's like in terms of just covering space, marking up the men. Same with Norgard, who is probably a bit more accustomed to the pace of the Premier League. I just need to see that a bit better. But I feel like on the ball, they have definitely provided an upgrade, and Zubimendi is just a delight to watch. Like he's pure class. Like he's amazing. Like I feel like, as you say, he's going to be the unsung hero of our season this
Oh,
season, because especially if we do
great thought.
add another player like an Eze, as well as maybe even a left winger alongside Gyökeres, alongside Madueke, alongside the players we have. If the season goes how we want, those players are going to be getting a lot of the goals and a lot of the accolades. But I think Zubimendi is just there, pulling the strings, conducting everything, and increasing everyone's level just the way he plays. Like, so I don't know what you think in more depth, but I'm
I
loving seeing these
agree.
guys.
I agree, but I also wanna use this quote. One of the very famous quotes about in world football about Sergio Busquets is that if you watch Sergio Busquets, you see the whole game. If you watch the whole game, you don't see Sergio Busquets. And I think for me, I've filtered in between two of those. I watched the game generally, and then I watched it, and I watched for Zubamendi specifically. And like during parts of the first time I watched it, but watching it over again. And I can tell you, I agree with everything you said, KP. We talked about it here, how good he is at the Euros and how good he was coming into this side in the Nations League, and how we imagine him transitioning into Arsenal. Getting the ball forward, dictating the tempo of the game has been the biggest factors for me. And I think Norgard, I brought up Norgard and Zubamendi combined together because I think Norgard, for me, is one of the biggest surprises in this team so far. Like we talked about that first game, the way he was willing, he was firing the ball into Kai Havertz's feet all the time, firing it and firing it in. And credit to Kai, not only does he receive the ball really really well, but two assists on two of the goals for the Newcastle game. He got the first goal was fired into his feet, good control, flicked it behind for Moreno, who I want to touch on and lead to next, with a lovely, lovely, lovely finish. I know we talked about Zubamendi, we talked about Norgard, Odegaard, Ethan Waneri, Declan Rice, Eze potentially coming into the squad. Where do you think? I mean, obviously we know his role. He's gonna have a role within the first team. But where do you think Mika Moreno fits in this squad now? Because there's so many players coming into different aspects of the game. No, we know we have a striker. We have Gyökeres. We have Kai, who's getting consistent minutes up there for God forbid injury. But where do you think Moreno fits in? Because I think he's one of my favorite players. He's grown to be one of my favorite players in the squad in terms of what not only is he a technical top level footballer, but he could win balls in the air, score goals with his head, score goals with his feet. He's picked up his finishing not only for club but country. He's going to be another, like you talked about, unsung hero. I think Mikel Merino, given the minutes, I think he'll be another unsung hero this season again. And I think that has to be spoken for. What are your thoughts about his fit in the squad and any other things you want to bring up?
I think obviously, given especially if he was to get an Eze and a left winger, Eze will probably play in that left eight as well, challenging Rice, play in the left wing position, challenging that left winger Martinelli, like playing all over the pitch. I think it's clearly that Arsenal trying to create a very much more competitive squad rather than just a clear first 11 and clear bench team. Like obviously, there will be players that are probably more than likely, if fit, if informed, they're going to start. But there's also going to be players that, for the certain game state, based on the characteristics of the team that we're playing against, based on form, are going to probably play. And a player like Merino, who is probably one of the most experienced players in the team in terms of being of age, brings that leadership, brings that know-how, being in our team for now more than a year. As you said, his finishing is quality, and he has chemistry with the likes of Zubimendi playing with him for club and country for many years, which I feel like enables that to allows Zubimendi to settle in. I think you'll see a lot of games where you probably see Merino start, especially where we have 3 game weeks where Rice might maybe want to make sure he doesn't get overloaded. You're going to see a lot of maybe Zubimendi and Zubimendi and Merino lineups where they have a certain level of chemistry, understand to play with each other. Zubimendi trusts him, knows how he wants the ball, and this will allow Merino to kind of be a bit more comfortable, especially the fact that he's more comfortable scoring. There's a bit more chemistry. I think it opens up the game. Like, I think with our squad, there's so many different profiles in each position. Like, no 2 players are exactly the same. Like, so that enables for different, if Mikel does different rotations, different type of like traits that you want to exploit based on the team, based on what these players can do, and etc. It's a juggle piece where, if the whole narrative around Arsenal was that we were predictable, I'm pretty sure next season we're basically the complete opposite and unpredictable. So I think that's where Merino fits in. And ultimately, long term, I'm saying we have players at different ages. Like maybe in a couple of years' time, you're not going to have a Merino in the squad, possibly, or you're not going to have certain players. But for now, where you're trying to build a good squad, you still need to have players that help transition the squad as well, in terms of the the leadership and the experience and just the know-how, because it also enables less pressure on those younger players to have to perform, which was the case last season, and that didn't enable us to win the league. So that's pretty much it.
I like the point you made about different profiles and different asking positions, because, for example, if we're looking at the bench and we need the guy off the bench to win headers, Gyökeres, stats-wise, even though he played for a different kind of team, he hasn't really scored many headers in his career. Not that I'm holding that against him. That doesn't really matter if you're scoring 30, 40, 50 goals. If you're scoring 50 goals, I don't care how you score them, as long as you score 50 goals. But my thing is, do you think that can offset the count potentially? Is there like a negative drawback from that? Maybe players might become uninterested in putting all in certain games. I mean, not saying it in a bad way.
I think that happens more. That happens more long term, like after a couple of years. I think in the beginning, you have to think about it. Like last season, you had players coming out from Arsenal squad saying, "Oh, we need to sign players. We need to get more players in. We need help." So you don't just get the help now, and just because maybe that certain help might be either taking your position for a certain moment in the season, or or they're playing well, like, or they're being favoured. It doesn't mean anything. Like, at the end of the day, when you come to one of the biggest clubs in the world, when you want to win, you have to have a competitive squad where the guy behind you is as good as you. That also, one, relieves the pressure on you having to perform all the time and having to play every game, and 2, it pushes you. Like, Saka's never had competition. Now he has competition. He can't just be comfortable. Like, he has to be comfortable, because if Madueke is looking sharp and Madueke is scoring goals, it's possible Mikel can actually pick him if Saka is not pulling up the level. Same with Odegaard, same with Rice. If we sign Eze, same with Martinelli on the left hand side, same with Gabriel now, same with Saliba. Obviously, Ben White, Timber, Lewis Skelly. You could even argue with Raya and Kepa. Like, it's obviously Norgard and Zubimendi. Maybe you can see a discrepancy, but Norgard has that know-how in terms of the Premier League. He has the legs and the experience. It's a good thing. Obviously, in a couple of years' time, if certain players aren't getting the minutes that they desire, that's where you have as long as you're playing them, you have sellable assets in a winning team that you now can sell for a good amount of money and then refresh it and bring other players in for whatever situation that you're in. That's how you build a team. Like how we've been doing it is the reason why we're struggling to sell those players that have been on the bench minutes, because one, they're not good enough, and two, they're not getting enough exposure in the team. And the players that we have are getting injured. Like this way, you hope the team is just like if Saka looks like he's played 2 games in a row and he looks like he has a little bit of a flare up. Okay, we're gonna start Madueke this game and we'll put Saka on the bench. And if we win the game, no need to bring on Saka. If we're drawing, maybe we can bring Saka last 20. But then that last 20 doesn't stress him out for the 30 that he's going to be getting kicked. Sorry, the 40, 50, 60, he's going to be getting kicked and he's going to be running up and down. Stuff like that, I feel like counts. Like no one has to play through injury like what it was last season and all that, get injections. That shouldn't be happening no more, because long term it affects the players. Like, what do you think though? Like, do you like what do you think? Like,
me personally, I agree with you for the most part, because I mean, it'd be crazy for us to say help, we need help, especially the players. We saw so many players last season. To your credit, you're making a great point. Even Timber playing on injections, rushing guys back from surgery, guys playing through injury, guys that we're looking at it like Saka's already back, Havertz is already back before the end of the season after it looked like he did his knee and hamstring at the same time. And that looked mad. How is he already back and gotten stronger? So I agree with that point to a large extent. But I think there might come a point in time, some people might argue, same thing with Nwaneri happened. He's starting to look at his minutes, starting to look at essential minutes. With guys like Max Doman even coming through, does that potentially turn Nwaneri's head? Does that make him think a sort of way? Even though he signed a 5-year deal, not talking about him specifically, but that could go for a lot of players around the camp. Kivior, who was arguably a lot of people wanted to leave, can now look at his minutes and say, well, listen, I stepped up in moments you needed me. Calafiori can't stay fit. I feel like I deserve this minutes over Calafiori, who has been getting those minutes in preseason when Gabriel hasn't been fit. When something happens to Saliba, Mosquera is going to be right there, or Kivior is going to feel like it doesn't matter, left side, right side, it doesn't matter. I should be playing above these new guys that are coming in. And what happens to when these guys come in, like Lewis Skelly, even though he's a top player, one of my favorite players in this squad, absolute baller. Do people look at him now and say, well, that's a kid. I put in my hard yards. Does Zinchenko feel that? Does even Calafiori feel that? Like, it depends on what the future some of these guys play. So I agree with you, majority on that. But we're going to see, like I said, over long term how that's going to build, because Mikel Arteta people have been arguing, can he balance the squad? Can he balance a full big squad? And can he really push and contend for us on all 4 fronts? And I think you need a deep squad to do that.
Yeah, that's what it is. All the best clubs in the world have a deep squad. Like if you look at all the best squads all around Europe, they have 2 players, even in their attack, 2 players in each position, and all those players are contributing to the GA that's helping these clubs win games over the season. When you have it's just how it should be. Like Arsenal last season, if we have a tough Champions League fixture midweek and we have a tough Premier League fixture either before or after, like we kind of have to play the same lineup in both games, like if we want to get the results that we want. But that's not fair. Like you can play maybe 4 or 5 players. You should be able to rotate 4 or 5 and bring in a couple players and refresh it. The level stays the same, and you can keep players fresh and you keep the competition that way. And guys perform, and maybe someone might perform on that Saturday, you might push themselves into the lineup for you. That's how it should be. It shouldn't just be a definite, we know the start. Like we've been coming up to these lineup previews in the season and be like, I can't lie, hey man, like I want to play talk about this guy, just or Eze, but it should be like that. And with your answer to like the down and stuff, I agree. I think eventually it gets there, but that's eventually. Like if you win this season, none of these players are going to want to leave, apart from any player that either has their contract out of the way or any player that's just definitely not playing. Maybe like a Jesus if he stays, or Zinchenko if he stays, or Trossard if he stays. Cool. Maybe Marino might look at his minutes and say, okay, maybe Eze's going to play more. He might have that. But players might not want to leave. There's some players that will say, I'll take a certain role if you're going to promise me a certain amount of minutes, and I'll stay because I want to stay in this environment. And I want to stay winning, and I want to. This is what there's players that play for City and Liverpool's and Real Madrid's, PSG's, Bayern's for years, and you think like,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? Fam, this is just how it gets. But the problem with Arsenal, just not. This is why I said if I like the idea of the whole unprecedented summer thing, because I feel like this summer has been very unprecedented for so many different reasons that it's excited me again for Arsenal. more than just
Go into your
obviously what
reasons.
I'm.
Let me hear some of your specific reasons as to why it's so unprecedented.
Obviously, like we've got 6 signings already confirmed. Like in July, I guess before, in July. That's unprecedented. We've never seen that before. Most of those signings, most would argue, are good additions to the squad, if not a couple of starters. That's a good tick. You've addressed a lot of positions that we know that we needed to upgrade in, or we needed to at least get depth in. And me and you, when we spoke in end of the season, we kind of assumed, and we named that we need this and that, but we kind of said we know Arsenal, so we kind of named like 4 positions maybe that we're gonna get. They've surpassed that, and they still possibly can get another 1, 2, maybe 3, depending on incomings and outgoings. My apologies. There's players that have left that we wasn't thinking about Tomiyasu potential termination or potential Jesus getting sold or a Trossard potentially all getting sold, or like in kind of a Barky movement in terms of that. Like we was thinking maybe Arsenal are gonna have to wait. Do you know what I mean? Arsenal doing things in a way that we haven't seen. Contract renewals are getting done to that stage now. We're only waiting for Saliba and Saka, where all the rumblings are that's all but done for both of them. That's before the season started. Like I didn't think that was going to happen either. All on top of the deals that we need to have done for in terms of incomings, and then also just the type of signings. Like we're getting different profiles. Like Gokeres is not a player that I would have expected Arsenal to sign, nor the type of profile that I thought we would have gone for. But in terms of obviously, and maybe you can look at that as Berta, and we'll see how that affects us both short term, long term. But it's good, it's refreshing. Like we're getting things done. Like it's at a stage where now Arsenal are going to start moving like a big club, like where players that are the fringe players, there's not going to be guys that are fringe players not playing and they're earning big amount of cash. Like the guys that like we're going to potentially have a lot of guys that weren't really playing over 100k. Now the guys that potentially might not be playing as much minutes are on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of wages. So if you need to move them now, you can move them a bit easier because teams know that the negotiation for the wages is a bit. It's not like what we have where you have 100 bag, 200 bag players that obviously are, maybe the fee that we want is not that mad, but they are not willing to take the low wages teams are offering them, and it's a struggle to sell them. This is these little things that I'm looking at, and then on top of that, just to transition, you see a player like Max Downham, and just the way he plays, bro, and that's not to shadow what Ethan has been doing and what he's doing. I think he's had a good preseason so far. Started 2 games, played in central midfield positions. I like how he roams around. Especially in the first game, I think he was much better than how he was in the Newcastle game. I don't think we involved him as much, but nevertheless, I feel like Max Downham, as I've always told you, it's better for these central players to start wide and then drift in because it's just about giving them as much space as possible, less of that physical battle and the little dark arts that players can do, like that can affect their game. And that guy is amazing, man. And I just want to hear what you have to talk about him. Like in these first 2 games, like obviously he's the whole world's talking about him. Of course, 15 years old, he looks like one of the best players in England, like for a long time, and one of the best young players. Player to rival Lamine Yamal, but like there's going to be a point in the season where Mikel's going to have to play him still, like, or